So it's time for our guest speaker. One of our members, Dana Kramer, got hold of me, it's been a few months back now, because this was originally scheduled for earlier in the summer, and said, well, there's this guy that I've been working with as a coach, and I think it would be really great to have him at the center. Now, I have to be honest, I get 3 or 4 of these a week, not always from our members, but, solicitations via email and in the mail, and that they want to come here and speak. And I'm a little, my one eyebrow goes up a little. Oh, really? Because I try to protect you. But so I did my due diligence and got back to Dana. I said, yes, let's make this happen. So it's happening, and here we are. And Stephen Connor is out of the Phoenix area in Arizona. He came upon this thing called the Enneagram that he has put his own unique perspective on some years ago, and it was one of those life-changing moments for him, and we've all had those. Hopefully you've had some here. And so you know what that's like. So he's going to be talking an intro piece this morning, and then he is doing a workshop from 1 to 4 that you're all invited to attend. And he also has some books and things in the lobby and all that. So without further ado, here is Stephen Connor.
I got it. On the right-hand side. Good morning. I am absolutely honored to be here. I tell you, it's a few things I've been able to share in my journey. First, I want to share with you that if any of you would have met me when I was 20 years old, I was the most introverted guy you would have met in your life. If you would have said hello to me coming in the door, you would have freaked me out. I probably would have left. And so I grew up in a real small country town in Ohio, and a lot of judgment, so transformation is part of what I'm going to share today as well. And I got a one-way ticket to Southern California when I was 20 years old, lived in the Huntington Beach area for 7 years, and I was on this journey of discovery to find out who I am. A lot of us, and I can certainly speak for myself, is that we know how we behave. That's what they teach us in school. I mean, think about this for just a moment before we jump into the presentation, is that, when we're younger, you're a good boy or a bad boy. You're a good girl, bad girl. When you're in school, you get good grades, bad grades. You get a job, you get a good review or a bad review. And I wanted to know, who am I, more than how I show up in my behavior. And it was absolutely fascinating. I remember when I was 16 years old, I told my mother, I said, Mom, God wants me to deliver a message. I don't know what it is yet, but when I know what it is, I'm going to do that and just honor it and leave that whole corporate world I was in for many years, and I'm going to follow that pathway. And that's what I've been doing now for the past 11 years. So it's an honor to be here. One of the things I think is very important is that I learned from one of my mentors years ago. He said, and he was an incredible speaker, he said, when people come to listen to your message, understand something, that you can spend $1 and you can make another $1, but how you spend your time is precious, because you can't get your time back. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to just share this message with you today. And one of the things I want to start with, if I may, is that, I look at the light of love in everything that I do, and I know my passion and why I'm here is everything to do with love. It's love and communication. Whether we're at work or whether we're at home in relationships, when we communicate well and when we have love in our lives, all the relationships are good. It's when we don't have the love and then we're starting to defend ourselves that we are then challenged. So I'd like to start with something I work with all my clients on is that if I were to take a light bulb above my head and make it as bright as it possibly can be, and I bring that light down through my head, almost like a meditation, to where I bring it down through my body, all the way down through my feet. And all of our lights have a dimmer switch on them. And what I mean by that is there was a lady who I just admired, when I was getting into speaking, and we spoke on stage 3 times together. And I remember seeing her at an event in Chandler, and I noticed her across the room. And as I walked closer to her, she got up and she went like this, and she said, "Come here, young man." And she scolded me. She said, "Don't you ever do that again." I went, "Do what?" She said, "When you walked into the entryway, I looked up because I saw your light. But the closer you got to me, you dimmed it down in my presence because of you were honoring me, but you were dishonoring you. And she said, don't ever do that again. So that light of love, when you bring it all the way down through your body and it's inside, you crank that dimmer switch all the way up, and when it's as bright as it can be, just expand it as far as your arms can go. That's my space. And when I'm in a light of love, darkness can't come in here. When I don't have my light on, it's easy to get all the way in here. But I can feel you right here if you got a little dark stuff going on, right? Or people that are toxic. I used to be one, and I know what they look like, right? So I get it. So when I'm in my light of love, and there's this book that talks about the truth, the light, and the way. When I'm standing in my truth, and I got my light on, it's a lot easier for me to see my way. And so on that note, I want to share also a quote that one of the ladies I met in Big Bear when I lived here, she was 75 years old, all white hair, and she met me and she looked me in the eyes and she said, yep, he's an old soul. And she gave me a phrase and she said, divine spirit guides and protects. We walk the path that love directs. So when we have our divine spirit in order and we really have clarity in who we are, it allows us to just experience life in a whole different and more beautiful way than ever before. And so what I'm going to share with you today a little bit, we're going to talk about this what I call 3 stages of love. And I think we've all been there from when we were younger till now. And the first one is enchantment. Everybody get enchanted when you meet someone? Oh my God, there they are. We get enchanted. Then the first time we hit a speed bump, it goes to disenchantment, right? And then as we continue to grow and evolve, it becomes maturity. Disenchantment doesn't mean it's over. That just is an opportunity for us to step up and really find out what that love was all about. So I want to tell you just a quick story on one of the guys I did some coaching with so you can see where this comes from for me. There was a gentleman I met about 4 years ago at a Christmas party. And he came up to me, looked like he could have been a linebacker for the football team. And he goes, I understand you're a coach. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, well, what do you coach on? I said, communication and relationships, whether it's personal or professional. And he said, well, I don't need your help professionally. I'm the CEO of my own company, and we're doing well. What I want to do is I want to learn how to be a better husband and a better father. And then he introduced me to his wife and his kids. His daughters were 8 and 10. And so I had him do this assessment, and I'm going to tell you how I got involved in Enneagram in just a moment, and we'll show you some slides here. And he came out, which was a type 1, which is the reformer, kind of the perfectionist. And so we're on our second coaching session, and I asked him a question. This is a big, tough guy that didn't let his emotions come to the surface. And I could see that he had a high need for control. And I asked him a question. Because, first of all, if any coach ever tells you that they have your answers, run. I don't have anybody's answers. I got questions for you, though, that we can draw the answers out. And I asked him a question. I said, if your daughters, when they grow up, if they were to be in a relationship with a man just like their daddy, would you be okay with that? And he said no. And he got tears in his eyes. And I said, okay, we just hit a button. What did we hit? His response is that my wife is a dynamic woman. She's incredibly educated. And I have such a strong need to protect and control and make sure we're doing the right thing that I've taken away her voice. And so we started working on that. Well, 2 days later, his wife called me. She goes, I don't know what you're doing with my husband, but whatever it is, keep doing it because a different man came home last night. And so now he's leading with his heart instead of his head. And so there's a nice bond that goes with the heart and the head. But I had a doctor friend of mine. We were doing a debate, and he said, I said, so what's in charge, the heart or the head? And he said, the head. I said, I'm going to challenge you on that. I said, you can find people in your profession that you can go to a hospital, and you could find somebody in a hospital that is still alive, but they could be clinically brain dead. But when the heart stops moving, it's called night-night. So just a little analogy that I want to share with you is that if you look at the head and the heart, you got the mental and the emotional. Anybody ever mess with your head mentally? Anybody? A little bit? How about emotionally? But when you have the harmonizing of those two together, you got the mental and you got the emotional. One starts with an M, the other one starts with an E. When you bring them together, you got me, and you can't mess with me. Right? So that boundary and that foundation for me there just really gave me a sense of protecting myself. So in the transformation, I was 11 years ago. I'm 53 now, proud of my age, feeling good. But 11 years ago, I was a vice president of a national sales company that we had grown from 29 offices up to 130 in about a 10-year window. So I had reached all the successes I could imagine, right? I had I understood Myers-Briggs, I understood the DISC assessment, so I was a psychology major. I learned all these things about behavior. And I was invited to a meeting in San Diego. And they said, and I was supposed to be one of the trainers, and they said, none of you guys are going to train this weekend. I thought, well, why are we here? And they said, we brought in a guy from San Francisco that was recommended by the Marriott Corporation, and he's going to talk to us about the Enneagram. There's 30 of us in the room. You could have heard a pin drop and went, Ennea what? And I thought I was pretty astute that there's something that slipped by that I didn't see. Well, the Enneagram's 2,500 years old. So I thought, okay, now I'm intrigued, and it's human development. Though it's got roots that go back to Tibet and some to Babylon. And I thought, well, let's see what this is. I got to tell you that at 42, I walked out of this workshop as though somebody had just introduced me to me for the very first time in my life. Because I got a chance to see more about who I am rather than how I behave. And that's what I want to talk to you about a little bit today, that transformational place. If you look at some of the things that you've experienced in life, where I grew up in this little town in Ohio, there was a lot of judgment, there was some prejudice, there was a bunch of just ugly things going on. And that really marked me as a kid. But we get to that place that Dr. Jim talked about with a transformation. So now my biggest challenge in life is now my greatest gift. So we're not supposed to run from it, we're supposed to learn from it. What's the lesson? And so on that note, I'm going to dive right in and share with you some things that I think are important. So what the Enneagram is, and if you look at these 9 types, is that, and by the way, we all have all 9 of those in us. But there's one that's really kind of your core type. There's a little online assessment you can take that takes about 10 minutes. And for anybody that wants to dig a little bit further or join us this afternoon in the workshop, there's a 1-page or 1 sheet out there on the table that if you just read A, B, and C and pick which one of those, and then read X, Y, and Z and pick which one of those fits the most, and put those 2 letters together, it'll give you a little bit of snapshot. But once you study this a little bit, you'll never see movies, sports, politics, people, and relationships the same, I promise. It all changes, right, in a beautiful way. So I'm just going to go real quick. The Enneagram, there's 9 basic personality types of human nature, and they're complex interrelationships. But what they really do is they're accurate because they're the motivation that's behind the behavior. See, I understood my behavior. I just didn't know how to change that. And to give an example, I remember there was one particular friend that I was a certain way with. Then there was another friend I was a little different with. And then there was another one that I was even different with. And what freaked me out is they were all 3 at the same place at the same time. And I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? I thought, how about just be me? Well, that was a thought, right? I thought, well, who's that? And so what this really talks about is the external behaviors, the underlying attitudes, one's characteristic sense of self, emotional reactions, and what we pay attention to. Because now, in the book, the first book I got on this, and the guy that I hired to work with me to teach me this, but the first book I got was called The Wisdom of the Enneagram. And so for anybody that's skeptical, because I was as well, I read in there, and one of the guys said, I'm not going to take this little silly assessment you have so you can put me in one of these 9 boxes. And their response was, you already live in one of those 9 boxes. Would you like to know which one and how to get out? Right? So we got to get a connection going on here. So you can't run from it. It's like trying to run from yourself. You won't get away. In fact, you are the only person in your individual life that can never leave you. Right? Family moves on, people pass on, but you can't get away from you. Right? So looking at these 9 types, and we'll dig into them just a bit, but just a quick overview. The reformer is kind of the perfectionist, the need to be perfect. In fact, I'll just show you some slides here on that in just a moment. I'll jump here. So what I want to talk about is 3 levels of awareness. 3 levels of awareness. This is one of the things I got from this study in myself, is that I was looking into all these books I got, the teaching that I found, and what I could not find for myself is, okay, it's show me how I am, but how am I showing up? How am I communicating and connecting with people? That's what really intrigued me the most. And so the 3 levels of awareness. Level 1 is I clearly need to know who I am, for real. Not who I hope you think I am, or what perception is, or what my best friend might say, well, you're all this and that. But really, who am I? Level 2 is who are you? And the key to that, without my opinion, without any bias, and without any judgment. You just get to be you. Is that liberating? You just get to be you. Level 3 is, how do we connect? Because I believe that we have to connect before we communicate. If we don't connect first, we're just taking turns talking, right? And each of these 9 types I'm going to share with you today, they all have a very unique communication language. What I find in relationships and anything to do with love is that and sometimes we're not even good at speaking our own language, but we all come from our language and we talk to somebody else and we just kind of hope they get it, right? So for example, if I spoke German and you spoke French, we're not probably going to know a lot about what's going on in this conversation. But if I speak German and I know you speak French, but I also speak French too, if I start speaking in your language, we just connected. So, level 1, who am I? Level 2, who are you without my opinion, any bias or judgment? And level 3, how do we connect? Because this takes the connection for something special to happen. I like that little fortune cookie picture I found is, you're about to meet someone that loves you in a way that you deserve to be loved. And when you can meet them later when you go home, it's just going to the bathroom, the mirror, take a look in the eyes, and you'll see exactly who that person is. All right, so let's dive in here. Show you some personalities that I want you to see. The type 1 of all these 9 types, and they really are fascinating, is that the type 1 is the reformer, the perfectionist, the judge, the critic, the need to be perfect. No matter how orderly things are, they could always be just a little bit better. I have a friend of mine that's a coach in Scottsdale that's a 1, and she said, Stephen, you got to teach me this stuff because I got clients that want me to work with them on it now. And she's a type 1. Now, just for the sake of an example, she had a big pillar candle on her island in her kitchen, right? I knew she was a 1. And I just slightly moved it. And she said, put that back. I said, I'm sorry, it goes right here. And she said, no, it goes right here. I said, oh, okay, I got it. I'm just checking, all right? That's the 1, all right? So, Martha Stewart, for example. When Martha Stewart messed up, she didn't go to jail, in my opinion. She went to adult daycare, right? And when she got out, she slipped right back into what she was doing like she never missed a beat. It was perfect. It's her type. Look at some others. I'm going to give you an example in history in a bit, but I want you to remember Colin Powell being a 1. Jane Fonda, she played in a movie called Monster-in-Law. And J-Lo just wasn't good enough for her son. Wasn't perfect enough. When we go to movies and we see actors or actresses playing a movie, if they're not playing their type, the movie is a dud. When they're playing their type, their authentic selves, we love it. I'll give you another example of that in a moment as well. Other folks up here, it's, again, Siskel and Ebert, type 1s. It's either this way or it's this way. There's no gray. Now, if you have a lot of 1 going on in you, or if you know somebody that it is, understand that the motivation of a 1 is it's important for them to be right. Being right is critically important. So if you're a 1 and you're talking and communicating with me, and I say, oh, that's ridiculous, total disconnect. 1s do not want to be wrong. I can communicate with you in another way, though. I can ask you a what-if question. So if you share something with me and I say, well, have you ever looked at it this way? If you like my idea better, notice it didn't make you wrong, that you can now adopt a new idea. That's communicating. Okay? So Bo Derek, was she the perfect 10 in the movie? So these are just some of the type 1s you see up here. The type 2, the helper, is nurturing, caretaker, giver, the need to be needed, sensitive to other people's needs. Now, for type 2, and I would imagine there's some 2s in the audience, right? A type 2, when you need me, you love me, right? When 2s feel like they're needed, they feel like they're loved. Now, I want to tell you also that when any of these 9 types are healthy, they're absolutely incredible. When they're unhealthy, they're all destructive in a very unique way, right? So the key is being healthy. Now, but we operate on what I call autopilot, right? When you were born and the umbilical cord was cut, God said, that little boy or little girl's on their own. I gave them everything. They just don't know how to use it yet, so I'm going to make sure it all works until they can figure it out. How many times a day do you remind yourself to breathe? Don't have to. You don't have to remind your heart to do anything. Cut your finger, it clots up and heals. It's an amazing system. It's an operating system. It operates without us paying attention. What I call that is like autopilot. It just does. But you don't want to live your life in autopilot. You want to live your life as the operator of the operating system. Just like if you had a GPS in your car, if it says go up 4 lights and turn right, and you saw an accident and you turn right at the next light, all your GPS is going to say is rerouting. You just became the operator of the car instead of let the car take you for a ride. All right? So look at the type 2s. A lot of talk show hosts are type 2s, which are the helpers. You'll hear them say, on our show today, we're going to have Dr. Susan, and she's going to help us with, they speak their language. I want you to listen for buzzwords when you're talking to people. We're going to talk about that in the workshop this afternoon. So you got Jay Leno. Oprah Winfrey's kind of like the poster child of some of the 2s. Leo Biscaglia, you look up anything in this guy's name on the internet, and it's going to come out love, right? Maya Angelou, Florence Nightingale, she's a nurse. Do they nurture and help people? Right? Mother Teresa. Ann Landers, dear Abby, I was wondering if you could help me with something. Right? These are all the 2s. We see them all the time. We just don't see them in this format. But now that I see people in this format, to me it's like a map. I can see where they go, and I'll talk more about this afternoon, because we not only have our core type, the numbers that are on either side of your number. I'm a 2. I'm a helper. So the numbers on either side would be a 1 and a 3. The Enneagram calls that a wing. So there's going to be times I take on the characteristics of my wings. And then if you look at that diagram again, I'm going to go back just real quick. I want to show you something here. See, there's 2 lines that come off of each of those numbers. One of them you go to when you feel safe and secure, and the other one you go to when you're stressed. If you knew how this whole thing works in this operating system, love is a lot easier to work with, right? All right. So the 2s, they're the helpers. The 3s, the achiever, successful, performer, motivators, the need to succeed, optimistic, self-assured, energetic, and it's about image. So a type 3 not only wants to win, they want to look good. They go hand in hand. Muhammad Ali, let's start with him. Back in the day, he would give you a rhyme on what round he'd knock you out in that round, and in the interview he'd say, and I'm pretty. He didn't touch me. Did he achieve and did he look good? Now, isn't it ironic that when they did a movie about him, they picked another 3 named Will Smith? That was not a stretch. I mean, how many times has Will Smith saved the world? Did he look good? Come on now. Did he look good? All right. Sharon Stone. Michael Jordan. Did he win and look good? Amazing. Got Tony Robbins, Bill Clinton, Brooke Shields. Tom Cruise. For most people, the mission would be impossible. Come on now, I'm a 3. Not for Tom. 3s will achieve. They will achieve and look good. And I'm going to give you an analogy on a movie that maybe some of you have seen when we get down to the 6, and I'll show you some of these 2 characters and how they come together. The type 4 is the individualist. Intuitive, artistic, romantic. They can sometimes be a little dramatic, but the 4s feel things. So if you're a type 4 personality, you're a feeler, right? You feel it in here. Now, the key with a 4, if you're a 4 and I'm trying to communicate with you, and you're being dramatic, the last thing you want to hear is, come on, lighten up. Disconnect. And 4s don't like you to cheerlead them either. Come on, you can do it. You're annoying, right? 4s don't want to hear that. 4s want you to feel it with them, right? Real quick example of that. There's I was on a show about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was called Coaching with the Masters, and there was and the host of the show was, she called me a couple days later and she said, Stephen, I loved what you shared on the show, and she's, I'm a type 7, which is the enthusiast, and I got to tell you, my son, who's going into the 3rd grade, I was supposed to take the summer off and just be with the kids, and I started another business and consumed my whole summer. But her son, they just got him to stop sucking his thumb over the holidays. And his anxiety, he's right back into it now. I said, how did you address that with him? She told him, I said that that's not acceptable, and she went on. I said, did that work? He said, no. I said, it didn't work because you weren't speaking his language. I said, here's what I want you to try. I said, I want you, instead of telling him what to do, I want you to meet him where he is. I want you to ask him, what he's feeling. Say, how you feeling? And then let him express it. And then I want you to ask this question. Would it be okay if mommy comes in there and feels that with you? And she said, he just hugged me and he quit sucking his thumb. He wanted me to feel what he was feeling instead of telling him what to do. She spoke his language. So you look at the 4s. Johnny Depp. I mean, when the guy is in a movie, he's not playing a character. He becomes the character, right? Scissors Hands, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dillinger, the Mad Hatter, and now Dracula? They have nothing in common. When I went to see the Mad Hatter just to see, if I didn't know it was him with all the makeup, I wouldn't have recognized that it was him, right? John McEnroe, did he get a little dramatic in his day? Come on, that was on the line, right? Barbra Streisand sings a song about love. She wants you to feel it. If it's a tearjerker, she wants you to feel it. Picasso, Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones. Carlos Santana sang a song once. He said, I want you to feel my guitar. He didn't say, I want you to hear it. He said, I want you to feel it. He's speaking his language. When you speak, you want to speak your own authentic language, but you want to give the other person an opportunity to speak theirs, and then you want to communicate in one another's language there. Dennis Rodman, he filled it a little bit too deep. When 4s are not healthy, now that's a judgment. When 4s are not healthy, they become self-absorbed. All right? Let go of the judgment. But 4s can also get self-absorbed if they're not in a healthy place. And they get lost in the feeling, right? The 5 is the investigator. So now you went from the 5 from the feeler to the thinker, right? So you've got the thinker, the intellectual, the observer, the need to perceive. It's about knowledge. And so now if you are a 5 personality, if I come up to you and say, how you feeling today? I'm not speaking your language, right? There was a lady that came to one of my workshops, and she's a type 5. She's in the information technology industry, and she's incredibly intelligent. It was not a stretch, right? And she said, and I had a little drawing for a coaching session. And she said, Stephen, my kids are grown. I'm in my mid-50s, and I keep kind of repeating patterns in relationships. Anybody ever do that? I did it once or twice. And she said, I'm just missing the mark, and I don't get it. Now, I want you to watch my body language, and here's the question I asked her. I said, when that happens, I said, how do you feel? And she went, And I said, I didn't ask you how it thinks. I asked you how it felt. She goes, oh my God, I do that all the time. She caught herself in the act. She defaulted to her type first before she went to her heart. So she's trying to think her way into relationships instead of feeling it, right? So now look at some of these folks here. Einstein, Bill Gates. And I want to show you on Gates, whatever type personality you are, right? And the key to this is you want to know what type you are, but you don't want to be stuck in it. You'll never hear me say, well, I'm a type 2. You know how we are. Come on. Now that means I got stuck into. I just want to know how it operates. I want to know how the system works so that I can be the operator of the system. Now, Bill Gates, type 5, pretty intelligent guy. But people, whatever type they are, the companies that they start resembles the same type. Microsoft, software that processes information. Give you a quick example on a 5. There was a couple that had hired me to work with their teenage son 4 years ago. And this young man was 19 years old, about 6'2", kind of a long, lanky young man, right? And he went to Arizona State University, bombed out so badly his freshman year, he was asked not to re-enroll. That's kind of ugly right there, right? And they said, Stephen, we don't know if we should go to get a counselor or if we should get coaches, right? So what's the difference? I said, all I can do is give you my opinion. Let's be real clear. There's a place for both. I said, so tell me what he's going through. And I said, and again, I have 2 uncles who are clinical psychologists in Laguna Beach, and one is the chief of staff at Long Beach State. So I've been around that audience for a little while. And I watch them. They go back more into where your history's been to try to make sense of where you are today. Not always, but that's part of it. I want to know, here's where you are today, where you want to go. Can't change that anyway. That's why they make windshields bigger than the rear view mirrors in your car, so you can see where you're going instead of where you've been, right? So it's kind of a little factor there. But if you look at this young man, he was a type 5, mom was a 2, right, the helper. Stepdad was a type 8, which we're not on yet, but that's a challenger. which they want to get it done right now. And the 5, they don't move really quick. They process things first. He said he just doesn't listen. When this young man found out that he was a type 5, and I worked with them as the 3 of them, then I worked with him one-on-one. Within the first 3 months, we got him re-enrolled in a community college. He's getting A's and B's, starting to work out, feeling good about himself. Right? They said, okay, we're seeing some results here. We want you for 3 more months. If you met this young man now, he's 23. He lives in England. He's going to college in England with his girlfriend. If he walked into the door, you would feel him before you turned to look. I'm just so proud of him. And he says, hey, thanks. And I said, you did all the work. My role in anything I do with people is I'm simply a light on the pathway. I don't take credit for anything that happens one way or the other. So if your journey kind of weaved back and forth, your life journey like a sidewalk through a park, if I'm just a light shining on that, about 3 feet in front of you to make sure you don't step on a dark spot, that's just a light on the pathway. And that's all I was for this young man. So let's look. Thomas Edison, another one. Hugh Hefner. 5s create their own private world. Did he create a private world? A little bit. Sigmund Freud, George Lucas. Now, Howard Hughes, incredibly intelligent man, but 5s, if they're not careful, will isolate themselves. That's what he did, right? Eleanor Chu, the first lady astronaut, and Stephen King. So that's the thinkers. So if you're a thinking person, and I'll listen to buzzwords, and I'll give you an example of that when we get to 7 here in a moment. The 6 is the loyalist, the questioner, the defender, the guardian, the need for security, right? They're trustworthy and they value the loyalty. Now, if I didn't know this information, I had a friend of mine who's a loyalist, and I had this great new idea, and I said, oh, I got to share it with somebody. And I shared it with them. You know what they said? What about this? What about that? Think about this. It sounded like they were raining on my parade, but I knew that they were a loyalist. A loyalist, they want to minimize the risk, and then they're loyal. So now I purposely will go find a friend that's a loyalist when I have a new idea, because if they can't find anything wrong with it, it's good, right? Because they scan it. They scan it hard. Now, so you got Julia Roberts. I'll give you an example. Did anybody see the movie The Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts? Yeah. All right. When a type 6, when a loyalist gets anxious, they do one of 2 things. Either they get clingy or they run. Was that a stretch? She was playing herself. And in one of the scenes, Richard Gere, who was a type 3, galloped off on a horse. Did he look good? Did he get her? Did he come back with her? Did he look good? And he achieved. They played the exact same roles in Pretty Woman. He pulled up in a hot sports car, looking hot, and she's like, what do you want? Skeptical. And when she realized he didn't want anything, she became loyal. Folks, this stuff happens all day, every day. We're just we do our lives sometimes more than just be who we are. Spike Lee, Steve Martin, Joe Pesci, some of that. Mel Gibson, also with Julia Roberts, played in a movie called Conspiracy Theory. They ran the entire movie, right? All skeptical. So that's the type 6 and the loyalist. Now the 7, if you ever went to a party and there's a bunch of type 7s, your cheeks will hurt at the end of the night. A lot of comedians are 7s. 7s are about fun. Adventure, the optimist, sensationalist, the need to avoid pain, right? And they're ideal seekers, and they're motivated by the possibilities. Now, a type 7 personality, if you look at some of these up here, again, this is a fun group. Elizabeth Taylor, 7's like options. Did she have a few options? Just a few in her day when it came to relationships. Robin Williams, I watched him on his HBO Live. The guy was doing joke after joke after joke so fast he started to sweat. I was trying to keep up with him, and I'm just listening. Right? His mind goes like that. A 7 is the idea person. A friend of mine who's a 7 I said, I want to brainstorm with them. Now, and I got 2 pages of notes in about 30 minutes. Now, here's the key. They're not going to help you finish any of that. Right? They're just going to give you the idea, and they're going to the next thought. Right? A quick example, there was another gentleman that was one of my salespeople years ago. His name was Tim. Tim was 24 years old, and it was a Friday, and I said, we're going to be on the telephones, we're going to be prospecting all morning. Tim made 10 phone calls and jumped up and went, whew, what are we going to do now? I said, 10, that's 30 minutes, man. I said, all morning. But his attention span was like, this is it. And then one of the other people in my office said, hey, let's ask Tim. It's Friday afternoon. Let's ask Tim what he's got planned for Friday night. This ought to be really good. They said, Tim, what do you got going on tonight? He said, he jumped out of his chair like he was came out of a rocket chute, right? He said, man, I'm glad you asked. He said, at 6 o'clock, I have a date. And if they don't show up at 7 o'clock, I have a backup date. And if they don't show up at 8 o'clock, me and my buddies are going to this new club in Scottsdale. See, Tim was going to have fun Friday. He just didn't know who with yet. And so I said, well, what if the first one shows up? He said, that's perfect. We'll reschedule everybody else for another great time. That's the 7. Herb Keller, founder of Southwest Airlines. Does he let his flight attendants have fun? I'm telling you, this stuff is real. We'll have fun this afternoon. The type 8, the challenger, natural-born leader. They can be confrontational. They can be a little blunt. They can be in your face a little bit. They're power seekers, assertive, direct, self-reliant. They're very protective, right? Now, my dad, past 10 years ago, my dad's a type 8. The last 2 years of his life, I taught him this, and he went, wow, I lived my whole life like that and didn't know it. He was a drill sergeant in the Marine Corps. Any questions? Right? Quality control engineer at General Motors. Everywhere he went, he was the boss, right? And he was one of those dads that, we didn't have a whole lot of time when I was growing up, but it was like, big boys don't cry, get up. You just be tough, right? Now, my own personal opinion, again, no judgment, but I think OJ might have had something to do with what happened. That's my opinion, right? But he hired 2 8s, Robert Shapiro and Johnny Cochran. And for an 8, losing is not an option. You want to be defended? Get you an 8. They're the gladiators, i.e., I don't know if I have him up here, but Russell Crowe. He played the movie The Gladiator. Not a stretch. He's playing his type. Now, General Norman Schwarzkopf, here's an example of it in history. Remember I told you Colin Powell's a 1? Schwarzkopf is an 8. And right around 1990, we were in a war in Kuwait, right? Those are the generals leading the charge. Colin Powell was at the Pentagon coming up with the perfect plan, just like a 1 would. And he gave the plan to Schwarzkopf. He executed the plan, and we got in and out of Kuwait. If you'd have swapped those generals and put Schwarzkopf at the Pentagon, he'd have said, get it done. And Colin Powell had been in Kuwait going, did we get this whole fax and saw the pages? You sure? We'd have failed miserably. They were in their rightful places to be who they needed to be. Martin Luther King Jr., we're going to do things my way, nonviolent. Barbara Walters, if you ever see her interview somebody, if they try to take over the interview, she will eat you up. Right? Frank Sinatra. You didn't mess with Frank in the day. He was leading the Rat Pack. Chairman. Sean Connery, ever see him in a wimpy movie? Come on, now you're talking about the original Bond, right? Glenn Close, Basic Instinct. She'll meet you on the elevator with a knife. You got to watch it. Don't be crossing up with an 8, right? And Donald Trump, you're just fired. I mean, when I see how people show up, I was at a meeting in Phoenix and the speaker was late and there was about 20 of us, and I just stopped back and observed. And I'm looking at how people are showing up in this whole thing. One guy jumped up and said, we got to get this thing going. I said, sounds like an 8, keep talking. I'm not trying to type people, I'm just listening, right? And the same meeting, after the meeting was over, a lady came up to me, she said, okay, Mr. Relationship Communication Guy, what type am I? I said, well, talk to me for a minute. In 5 minutes, I said, you sound like an enthusiast, which was the 7. And she went, and left. I thought, okay, nice to meet you. I got an email like at 10 o'clock that night, and it literally said, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I'm a 7. A little enthusiastic, I kind of saw that in the conversation, so I started speaking her language, right? Stuff works. Stuff works. The type 9, the peacemaker, it's like harmonizer, why can't we all get along, the mediator, avoid conflict, right? They want to be supportive, but they just want to keep the peace. Now, of all these 9 types, the peacemaker is kind of the chameleon. They can get along with everybody else easier than everybody else can. So if you just look at some of the Dalai Lama, you look at some of he kind of gets along with everybody. But you look at some of the other pieces, I want to point this one out right here. Shaquille O'Neal. Now, Shaq, since I know you guys are in California, I'll give you a Laker example. Shaq is 7'1", weighs about 330, 340, and had about 8% body fat when he was playing with the Lakers. And wears a 23 shoe. Now, come on, I wear an 11. That's a 22 right there. That's a whole lot of foot. If he kicks you in the butt Monday, by Tuesday, you're still feeling it. Right? That's a lot of foot. Now, but he's a peacemaker. Now, Kobe Bryant is a type 3. Right? So he's an achiever. But Kobe was not really healthy when he played with Shaq because he hated being compared to Michael Jordan. And rightfully so. He just wanted to be himself. That little incident in Colorado started clearing up his health that he had. So they go into the huddle, and the coach, Phil Jackson, his nickname, anybody know his nickname? The Zen Master, type 5. Hold on for a second, let me process that. All right? Phil Jackson calls timeout. They go into the huddle. Now I want to take you back to this other slide in the beginning just to show you, make a point here. I'm going to show you what this thing does when it comes to the wings. Come on, keep clicking with me. One more, there we go. So if you look at the 9, when I talked about the numbers on both sides of you, that's like your left arm, right arm is kind of a wing. So he's got the 8 wing and the 1 wing. Of all these 9 types, the 8 and the 1 are the 2 of those that want control. The 1 wants control because they know the right way to do it, and the 8 wants control because they're the boss. They just have different ways of wanting it. So Shaq, they called timeout. They got their microphone in the huddle. All you could hear over everybody else is Shaq said, "Give me the ball." He's in his 8 wing. He didn't say, "Hey, can we run a play for me?" No, he said, "Give me the ball." That was not open for discussion. He said, "I have a perfect plan. Dunk the ball, 1 wing, going to win the game." They came out of that particular timeout. Kobe Bryant lobbed the ball to Shaq. I don't know if you remember that. Shaq caught it with 1 hand, dunks the ball, and the Lakers went on to win. In the interview, you got Shaq and Kobe. Now, Kobe's 6'6", so he looked like a little boy standing at the Shaq. Right? And Kobe's 5 inches taller than me. I'm like, man, that's a whole lot of dude. They went to Shaq first. They said, "Shaq, tell us about that last play." Now, I want you to hear what he said, how he spoke Kobe Bryant's language. "Tell us about the last play." All he said, "Kobe was the man." Didn't Kobe want to be the man? They won 2 more. He spoke Kobe's language, and it worked. And so the thing that you got there is that when they even traded him at the end of his career there, he went to Miami and played with another type 3 named Dwayne Wade. They won the championship his first year there. And all he said was, he nicknamed him Flash. Well, Flash was the man. When we resonate in our own authentic selves, in our type, is when we're our healthiest and then we shine the brightest. But all of this, bringing it back to center, is about love. Excuse me. So this afternoon, what we want to talk about is, I'm going to share with you some things that life is so much brighter when we focus on what truly matters. It's not your job. It's not anything you do. It's who you are and how you love each other. And that's what I hope that, if you want to come and join me this afternoon, it's 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And we're going to have a lot of fun with this thing. So I want to thank you for the honor of being here today. It's quite a pleasure. I want to thank Dr. Jim and the entire staff. It's just an honor to come over from Phoenix to share all this with you today. So thank you, and we'll have one more today.